In the final years of the Galactic Republic, there existed a rare circle of soldiers whose loyalty ran deeper than any programming, whose discipline went far beyond generic engineering, and whose skill rivaled the greatest warriors of any age. They were the Clone Commandos, the elite sons of Jango Fett, shaped by Mandalorian training, hardened by live fire, and forged for missions no ordinary clone could ever hope to survive. And yet, for all their loyalty to the Republic, for all their precision, sacrifice, and brotherhood, there was one figure at the heart of the Jedi Order and at the heart of the Republic whom they despised more than any separatist general, bounty hunter, or warlord that they ever faced. Mace Windu, the famed warrior of the Republic, master of the Forbidden Form 7, the Jedi who stood on the balcony of Geonosis and signaled the beginning of the Clone Wars, was, in their eyes, the Commandos, not a hero at all. To them, he was a symbol of something worse. He was the man who struck down their father. He was the general whose decisions cost their brothers' lives. He was the Jedi who embodied everything their Mandalorian sergeants had warned them about long before the first shot of the war was ever fired. Greetings, lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. We are simply acknowledging a truth that the wider galaxy never realized here, that the Republic's most elite warriors, the very soldiers bred to defend its future, viewed one of the most celebrated Jedi Masters with a quiet, enduring hatred and resentment. A hatred born not only from culture, but from experience. A hatred rooted in a single day on Geonosis, the day that their world would forever be changed. But before we understand why Windu became the focus of this resentment, we have to understand who the Clone Commandos truly were. A Clone Commando is not a regular trooper. They are not frontline infantry. They are not faceless soldiers in white armor. They are warriors raised in the Mandalorian tradition, bound by clan and contract, and loyal to the Republic only because Jango Fett, their father, their template, their chieftain, signed a deal that would shape the entire galaxy. To understand their hatred, we must begin with their identity. We must begin with who they were and what they believed. Before the war twisted everything, the Clone Commandos were something incredibly rare, a specialized breed of soldier who stood apart from the rest of the Grand Army of the Republic. Most of the clones were bred for obedience and battlefield cohesion. Commandos were bred for independence, initiative, and extreme adaptability. They weren't created to march in formation. They were created to infiltrate, to sabotage, to assassinate, and operate in the shadows where even Jedi hesitated to tread. A different cast of clone entirely. Only a tiny fraction of the Mandalorian cloning program was devoted to their creation. Each squad was made up of 4 uniquely engineered clones with each enhanced intellect, specialized training, and physiological profiles tailored for survival. Where a standard trooper operated on discipline, a Clone Commando was said to operate on pure instinct. They were stronger, sharper, faster, emotionally deeper, and more stable under pressure. And perhaps most important of all, unlike most clones, they were incredibly complex individuals, raised in brotherhood, built for war. Commandos were trained in pods of 4 from birth. These pods were not just squads. To them, they were clans, brothers in every sense of the word. They lived together, they fought together, they bled together, and they were conditioned to believe that their squad was their entire world and purpose. Losing a brother on the battlefield was not the loss of a teammate, it was the loss of family. This level of emotional depth is part of what made the Clone Commandos so formidable and so vulnerable emotionally. Mandalorian blood without Mandalorian birth. But the first defining part of their identity came from who raised them. Out of the 100 training sergeants on Kamino, 75 of them were Mandalorians. They were veterans, mercenaries, and warriors who lived and fought beside Jango Fett. That alone changed everything about the Clone Commando program. They weren't raised like other clones. They were raised to fight as Mandalorians. They learned Mandalorian weaponry, Mandalorian tactics, Mandalorian war chants, Mandalorian brotherhood, Mandalorian discipline, Mandalorian reverence for clan hierarchy, and above all, they were taught that Jango Fett, their Alith Buir, their clan father and chieftain, was the greatest of them. This created a culture inside of the Republic's army that the Jedi could never fully understand. The Mandalorian contract. To a commando, the Republic wasn't a nation or a cause, it was a contract. Mandalorians fulfill their contracts. A Mandalorian honors their employer. But a Mandalorian is not sentimental about the people who hire them. The Commandos' loyalty flowed in 3 descending tiers. Brothers first, the Republic second, the contract, and the Jedi last. The order mattered, because the Mandalorian sergeants told them bluntly, "You are not a Jedi. Do not pretend to be a Jedi. Do not fight like the Jedi. The sergeants taught them that Jedi rely on the Force, that Jedi cheat in combat, that they make foolish decisions because they don't understand war the way that the Mandalorians do, and if a choice ever came down to following a Jedi or saving your brother, you save your brother. These ideas were baked into the Commando psyche before the Clone Wars ever began. Jango Fett, their father, their ideal. Jango Fett was many things to the galaxy, a bounty hunter, a mercenary, a weapon. But to the Commandos, he was something else. He was the architect of their existence, the model of their identity. He was the face that they saw in the mirror, the living embodiment of the Mandalorian ideal, and the warrior that they were taught to emulate. When Jango Fett signed the contract with the Republic, he was fulfilling a job, and as the Commando saw it, this was the continuation of that job. This worldview would shape everything they believed. It shaped how they fought. It shaped how they viewed themselves. But most important of all, it shaped how they viewed the Jedi. When the Clone Wars began on the dusty world of Geonosis, most of the galaxy saw shock and confusion. The sudden reveal of the Clone Army, the Jedi Order charged into battle for the first time in 1,000 years, the spectacle of lightsabers clashing against droid legions under crimson skies. But for the Commandos, the Mandalorian-born sons of Jango Fett, Geonosis would become worse than any battle. It was the day that the war truly began, and it was the day that they lost everything. It was the death of Jango Fett, a blow to their identity. In a matter of seconds, the man who created them, the warrior whose DNA shaped their every breath, their every instinct, their very purpose, was struck down before the war ever started. Windu didn't just kill Jango Fett, he killed him in a way that the Commandos interpreted as a profound insult. Jango's jetpack had malfunctioned, his mobility was reduced, he was fighting wounded, sand in his armor, exhausted from battling the Reek. To Mandalorians, a warrior's final duel is a sacred rite. It is a chance to face one's fate with dignity, with skill, and with the pride of a life lived by battle. But Windu struck quickly, too quickly. He did not give Jango a warrior's death. He didn't give him the honor their sergeants drilled into them every day of their lives. He didn't offer the respect due to the galaxy's greatest warrior. To the Clone Commandos, this was not an act of a noble Jedi Master. It was a violation. It was a dishonor. It was everything that they were warned about. The Mandalorian trainers had told them for years that Jedi cheat, Jedi take shortcuts, Jedi do not fight fair, and Jedi bend the world to their rules. In that moment when Windu beheaded their father in a single brutal stroke, those warnings felt justified. But then something worse happened. They were thrown into hell as ordinary infantry. The most grievous injury was not Jango's death, it is what happened to the Commandos immediately after. You could argue that Windu killing Jango Fett was personal, but what happened next was professional and unforgivable. The Clone Commandos were never meant to be frontline troopers. They were rare, they were precious, they were the culmination of millions of credits and years of specialized training. They trained under live fire. They were brought to near death to prove that they could be brought back. They survived conditions that would break any regular clone. They were made for surgical strikes, not massed frontal assaults. They were the Republic's deadliest assets, not disposable soldiers. But in the chaos after Jango's death, they were thrown into the first wave of the Battle of Geonosis as basic infantry. Hundreds of commandos, one of the rarest casts of clones in the entire army, were deployed like untrained foot soldiers into an open field slaughter. Many died in minutes. Many were separated from their squads. Entire pods were wiped out before they ever executed a single special operations mission. Their brothers, their men they shared their entire lives with, fell like cannon fodder, and the Commandos blamed Windu. To them, Windu had killed their father dishonorably this day, and then he had carelessly wasted their brothers. Within the span of a single day, he shattered their world twice. Was it fair? Was it rational? Was it entirely accurate? Maybe not. But emotionally, culturally, and psychologically, it didn't matter to the Commandos. Mandalorians do not rationalize their honor. They feel it, they breathe it, and they live it. The Commandos felt that Windu had violated everything they were taught to stand for, and this is a wound that did not heal. On Geonosis, Windu had become the living symbol of dishonor, waste, the Republic's carelessness, and the Jedi's lack of understanding of a real war. It ended the Commandos' ability to ever trust Mace Windu, or the Jedi that he represented. If this is how the greatest warrior of the Jedi fought, it was clear to the Commandos that they were not going to get along. However, with all of that said, As the Clone Wars expanded beyond the brutal chaos of Geonosis, the Republic slowly began to understand what exactly it had created in the Clone Commandos. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were not meant to form lines, to march in ranks, or hold territory for hours at a time. These were weapons of precision, scalpels, not hammers. The Grand Army finally adjusted to them. But the psychological wounds of Geonosis would always linger, and so did their distrust of the Jedi. But as the war raged on, something else was revealed that set the Commandos apart. Unlike standard clones, whose personalities were intentionally muted or homogenized, Clone Commandos were allowed and even encouraged to develop individuality. The Kaminoans didn't like this, but the Mandalorian sergeants insisted on it. It was part of being a warrior. It was a part of surviving and living. And so the Commandos grew into something almost unheard of among the clones. They were emotionally extremely expressive, stubborn, opinionated, fiercely loyal, capable of grief, resentment, and even personal ethics. Some Commandos questioned orders. Some refused missions that violated their sense of honor. Some openly disagreed with Jedi leadership. These weren't defects. They were Mandalorian traits woven into a Republic uniform. After the catastrophic misuse of the Commandos on Geonosis, the Republic adapted. The GAR began deploying them properly, behind enemy lines, on sabotage missions, targeting separatist leadership, destroying droid factories, performing stealth infiltration, rescuing hostages. Over the course of the war, the GAR realized that the Jedi didn't understand everything, and for the war effort to succeed, not every unit needed to fight like the Jedi. The Commandos represented efficiency without hesitation, and as the war scaled across thousands of worlds, the Republic leaned on these qualities more heavily than ever. In terms of their relationship with the Order, some Jedi respected them, some admired their capability, some even trusted them, but many did not. And the sentiment was a mutual one. Clone Commandos saw the Jedi as unpredictable, overly idealistic, hindered by compassion, and unwilling to do what was needed to win the war. They saw Jedi leadership as slow, cautious, and foreign to Mandalorian culture. On the other side of the coin, the Jedi saw the Commandos as dangerous, impulsive, emotionally volatile, and too tightly bound to each other and emotion, not the Order. The Jedi could feel the Mandalorian edge, a culture of violence honed over centuries, and Commandos in turn felt the Jedi's discomfort. Eventually, both sides silently agreed to keep their distance. Jedi didn't want to command Commandos, and Commandos didn't want to serve under Jedi. But this was not resentment, it was practicality. Two different warrior cultures recognizing that working together created more friction than it did success. But the result was a powerful one. The Republic now had two parallel war machines, the Jedi-led clone armies, and the Mandalorian-bred commando strike forces. It was this diversity of warrior that made the GAR potentially stronger than any military the Republic had ever fielded. The Commandos were war-shaping assets. The war evolved because of them. Missions that the Jedi would not attempt, Commandos executed, and operations that required ruthless or stealth would also fall to them. While the Jedi believed themselves to be the leaders of the Republic's army, there was a growing realization among soldiers and Commandos alike. Clone Commandos didn't need Jedi guidance, they didn't want Jedi philosophy, and they didn't fear the darkness of the war. They had been born for it. They had been forged for it, and the Republic finally understood that. By the middle of the war, the Republic understood what it had in the Commandos. They were quiet professionals who succeeded in missions where failure meant a dead galaxy. But one thing never changed: their view of Mace Windu. Because everything Windu represented, the doctrine, the rigid battlefield judgment, the detachment, this all clashed directly with the Commando worldview forged under the Mandalorians. Their loyalty to the Republic was not philosophical, political, or religious. It was personal. Jango Fett was their standard, their instinct, their identity. The way that he died mattered. And in their eyes, Windu denied him the death of a Mandalorian warlord and chieftain. The moment branded Windu permanently as someone who did not understand the way that they lived, the way they fought, and how they honored their dead. The Commandos were not built to delay, negotiate, or pause for reflection. They were built to bleed the enemy, to break separatist infrastructure, to win battles before anyone knew they began. The Jedi respect life. The Commandos respect the contract and the mission. One side fought with restraint, the other fights for results. What makes the Commandos so unique and so dangerous at the same time is their independence. Some even resisted Order 66, they ignored it, some saved their Jedi, and some walked away entirely. Their loyalty ran sideways to the entire chain of command. Their loyalty was internal, to their squad and to their brothers. Mace Windu never existed in that space. He was outside of their clan, outside of their culture, and outside of their respect. Some things never change, and Mandalorians are not going to get along with staunch, strict Jedi. They embody a worldview that is fundamentally at odds to their own. Instinct versus doctrine, brothers versus order, bleeding the enemy versus containing the conflict. And that's the paradox of the Commandos. They were Mandalorian sons fighting a Jedi war, under the command of a man who killed their clan father. Some say Mace Windu was justified. Some say Jango chose the battlefield and paid the price. Others argue that Windu broke Mandalorian honor, killing an injured warrior in a way that no Mandalorian should accept. But what do you think? In the end, who was right? The Commandos who saw Jango's death as dishonor, or Windu, who saw it as a necessary strike in the chaos of Geonosis? Let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, may the Force be with you, and have a phenomenal day.